Hello and welcome to SuccesSoul Conversations with me, Vicky Paul. These conversations with inspiring people are designed to shine a light on some of life's big questions, to help lift your spirits, to guide you towards your truth, and really just to help you become who you were born to be. And I'm so excited to be chatting to Carolyn Bennett today. Now, for those of you who may not have heard of Carolyn, she is a law of attraction expert. She's a coach and she's also a spiritual mentor. And I don't know about you, but there couldn't be any better a time to start remanifesting for ourselves and bringing something new into your life. We've all had a pretty dire 2020. So this is a great opportunity to learn what the law of attraction is if you're not familiar with it. But if you are practicing law of attraction, then make sure you stay watching because Carolyn is going to help you supercharge that. So welcome to SuccesSoul Conversations.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Oh, I'm going to change the format of these ever so slightly. And I want to start off by asking you, what does spirituality mean to you? Because we do get some people who watch this who maybe aren't spiritual. And I'd love to explore what that means for each of my guests. So.
Wow, that's such a beautiful question and quite an expansive one. I'll just give a bit of background because it's going to then help to understand what spirituality means to me. So I was born into a Christian household and we used to go to church every Sunday and we used to pray and we used to sing all the hymns, and all these kind of things. But it always felt a bit weird for me because, it was kind of like there's meant to be this all-loving God that loved us unconditionally.
Mm-hmm.
There's so many messages about, burning in hell and I used to be really frightened of whatever this presence would be. So it kind of felt like a really incongruent energy. Because on one hand, I wanted to so believe that there was this gorgeous big daddy type man in the clouds that would look after your every need. But then, on the same token, if I did or said something wrong, then I would be thrown into the pits of hell. And that's kind of like how I, kind of transcribed it in my own mind as a child. And my dad was very spiritual in his own way, but he was kind of went down one complete route, which at the time, especially being a teenager, I thought he was a complete nutter. And over time, I kind of closed off to anything really, because I thought, I don't like religion because that's scary. And I'm watching on the news and they just seem to be at war with one another. And then I was like, but I don't know, spirituality seems a bit weird because my dad's spiritual and I'm not really into what he's into. So I kind of just felt safer not being into any of it. And it wasn't until I had my own kind of very strange experiences growing up, but it wasn't until the birth of my daughter that I really started to become very interested in what spirituality meant. And I felt myself starting to be drawn to things like oracle cards and reiki, and I went to go and see a medium for the first time, and I'd never been drawn to anything like that before. So it was almost like my soul or my energy was just being drawn to go on its own exploration, if you like.
Mm-hmm.
And as a result of it, I discovered that there is this most beautiful presence in the universe, and you don't need to go to a church to connect to it because it's within and around us, and we are already a part of it. I began to understand that spirituality was the difference that made the difference. Mm-hmm. It's like the missing piece of the puzzle. It's the true vibrancy and essence of life. It's what makes things come alive. It's, the miracle of the flower growing. It's the miracle of the laughter in the moment. It's, it's the heart-centeredness. And over time, I started to realize that actually I didn't need to believe in any God or anything. I'd had really profound experiences with angels and, ones that blew my mind. So I had no doubt in my own mind that angels exist. And as a result of that, I kind of built my own practice of what spirituality means to me. And I think that we all have, one size doesn't fit all. I think we all have and are all drawn to different things that nourish our soul. So spirituality to me, really, if we boil it down to the absolute kind of bare bones of it, it's all about love. It's all about returning to the heart and living a heart-centered life, a life full of consciousness and grace and integrity. And to me, spirituality is returning from the head into the heart. So returning from fear to love. So it's kind of like coming home and living life through color, and instead of that kind of black and white, egoic, mundane, rinse, recycle and repeat experience. This is like true connectedness and presence and unity and union. So that's what I kind of believe spirituality is, but I could go on for hours, but hopefully that in a nutshell gives you something.
That is wonderful. I know it's such a massive topic, and over the years, my explanation of what spirituality means to me has changed, and that is the very essence of what spirituality is the fact that it is ever evolving. As we grow, it grows. So thank you very much for that. We talk about colour, and we just had this conversation because you've got such a beautiful backdrop, and I'm in the middle of a house renovation. And there's absolutely nothing. This is the only space in my house that doesn't look like a building site or has piled up furniture. So it's the fact that you've got lots of pinks and sort of pale blues, all very calming, all very feminine energies. They're lovely. So I want to just delve in, if it's all right with you, because there's just so much I want to ask you and to have you share for everybody watching and listening. But these conversations, if you're new to SuccesSoul Conversations, they're based on my book, How to Be Successful, which is really a guide to reconnecting with your soul. And I've tried to simplify that process as best I can and put it into sort of 3 stages. And they're always, for anyone who finds themselves on a spiritual path, there is a point in their life when they decide, okay, enough is enough. That can have been over a period of time where it's just built up. Sometimes it can be one of these life-changing events that happens in a blink of an eye. And I want you to go into your story, but just very briefly. I mean, you were born into quite a challenging childhood. You were born into a family where there was alcoholism, and that obviously led to mental health issues and then abuse. And as a child, you kind of tend to mirror what you're brought up into. And then as you grew up, you found yourself in these kind of self-destructive patterns of behavior, and then attracting volatile relationships. Now, maybe not everybody's had such an intense experience as that, but everybody watching, throughout their lives has had patterns of behavior where they have not served them the best. That's just how our body copes. It's how we blank stuff out if we're not in a space where we can actually face the challenges that we're facing. So I'd love to understand, and if it was that period of time, then great, go to. If it wasn't, if there was some other moment in your life or a period of time when you went, okay, enough is literally enough. I'm out. I'm done. Something has to change.
Wow, I felt quite emotional as you were describing that, because I thought, gosh, that really is me that you're describing, but I feel like in a completely different place now. So yeah, beautifully explained. Wow, gosh, as I'm kind of casting back, I would say there's probably about 5 points of looking up to the universe and saying, I hand my notice in. If something doesn't change or I don't get some help here, I'm out. I literally am. And multiple times I was very, very close to kind of ending the journey, but something always happened. The universe and, our guides and our angels always kind of like have our back. But I would say the ultimate, after all of these experiences, the destructive patterns, I got it heavily into, escapism through party drugs and alcoholism. And, basically I was mirroring what was going on at home. But I found myself, nearly dying a few times because I'd overloaded my system with way too much and not giving if anything had have happened. So having been under that pressure from the minute I was born, and then all of these other kind of lifestyle destructive and all these other things that had happened, it was in 2015 was the final moment, but there was quite a few defining moments leading up to it. 2015, the final one. My body had been moaning and complaining for a little while. We know the mind-body connection. I've been into spirituality and the law of attraction since 2006, but I started noticing since the death of my dad in 2011 that my body started giving me warning signs that something wasn't right. But I was ignoring them, still smoking, and I was kind of still not drinking as heavily. I'd stopped the drugs, a couple of years before that. I'd done really well to start climbing up the hole, but I didn't realize what a climb that I still had. So 2015, I was sat at the top of the stairs, just crying my eyes out because I couldn't get down them. My whole body was in so much pain. My feet were so swollen. My toes were kind of apart because the cartilage, everything in between it. I just couldn't walk. Every step felt like walking on glass. I felt sick the whole time, and I sat at the top of the stairs and I just sobbed and sobbed, and I had no idea what was going on. Anyway, it took a little while. I was in and out of the NHS for a while, and after 2 years of painstaking experiences, kind of being misdiagnosed with all sorts of stuff, I was diagnosed with an autoimmune disease, rheumatoid arthritis. And at that point, it was like probably one of the most defining points, because it made me realize how much my body, my mind, and my emotions had been through, that I had never, that it had gone so deep that I'd never really dealt with, because life became a battle of survival of the fittest. We had no time, I came out of school with no qualifications. All of that was luxury. And all of a sudden, my body is now, knocking on my door very loudly saying, you can't carry on the way you're carrying on. In that moment, the most profound and beautiful journey started for me. And I never thought I would ever say that, having been in so much pain. I was in a wheelchair on one family holiday because I just couldn't walk. But I look back now and I think, what a gift. It's probably one of the most profound gifts that I've ever been gifted with, because it's only through that have I really, kind of like put my diving gear on, and kind of like my breathing apparatus, and dive deeper into my own emotional journey, and unhooked some of the childhood trauma that I went through, learned incredible journey of self-love, moved from my head into my heart, opening my heart. I have more compassion, I have more empathy, so somebody said to me, would you change that? I said, no, not for the world, because it's actually part of the rich tapestry of who I've become. So part of my work is to help people to extract the soul lessons from the challenges of what they experience, so that they realize actually all of these are designed to unlock potential. They were never designed to break us. It was all designed to make us. So it's kind of like a little bit of the rising of the phoenix. But that was the kind of the straw that broke the camel's back, was that experience in 2015.
And I mean, like you, there was a number of things that happened in my life, and everybody's journey is different, but we do share that sort of similar essence where, there was a number of times when we didn't pay attention as well as we should. And I know that you talk about, the victim mentality and being the victim, and this is happening to you. You and I both know, having come out the other side of it, that it's happening for us, by us. We chose this experience, and it's an enriching experience. But for anybody who maybe isn't quite there yet, I'd be really keen to understand how you turned around that victim mentality, because sometimes, and it's interesting, when I give readings, when I do sort of soul purpose sessions with clients, and there's a lot of people that come into this life to experience the victim mentality, it can be quite triggering. And I guess I feel uncomfortable with it because that was one of my challenges to go through. But, the victim doesn't necessarily mean to be somebody who's on the end of as extreme an experience as you had in terms of the alcoholism, the volatile relationships, the abuse, etc. So can you just expand a wee bit on what being a victim looks like, so that people can maybe connect with it, and then any kind of signposts in terms of how you can start to begin to reverse that sort of shift in energy, instead of it coming, the world's at me, it's how you present out to the world. Because this links in very nicely to obviously the law of attraction, and we're going to explore that in a wee minute.
Yeah, I think there's such great questions. So I didn't know that I didn't know. So I didn't know that I was a victim. I just know that all this stuff was happening. And the victim aspect of self, which is the ego aspect of self, I'm very fond of. And a lot of people go, what do you mean? It's like, it's a part of ourselves that are birthed to keep us safe and protect us, and it gives very antiquated ways of dealing with challenges, but it's kind of like your quick emergency go-to of dealing with hurt and pain, like kind of going into defensiveness, and and all the other kind of things that come along with it, jealousy or lack mentality, or feeling that we're separated or closing down. There's so many different traits that come with the ego aspect of self. A lot of them are kind of like head based, because we have to go into our head because our heart is so wounded. So the ego aspect of self is, first of all, is birthed as a way of protecting self, because there are no other methods to help it to get to a place of thriving rather than surviving. So that's very much a survival, defensive, reactive space to be.
A very human space.
Pardon?
A very human space, because we're obviously here in this physical world.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me it was like noticing, actually for me it was this one thing that's coming to mind. I sat in front of a coach around about 2011 2012, and I was explaining everything that had gone on in my life and what was currently brought me to that process in that moment. It was quite a hard coach, but I think I needed that, because I did have this hard ego. Now, this hardened ego had to be born to protect me. Otherwise, I don't think I would have made it. So it needed someone hard to kind of crack that shell. And he said to me, he was listening very intently, very compassionately. And then the final thing he said is, Carolyn, the only common denominator of everything that's going on in your life is you. And I was like, whoo, you may as well just throat punch me. But you know what? I'll never forget that, but I needed it. Because I was so blaming everyone and everything, you know, she did this and he said that, and if it wasn't for me, and woe is me, and I did kind of just need a little bit of that awakening, and it was that moment that I really started to. I went through a bit of a 12-step process. I think it was a bit earlier than that year-wise. I went through a bit of a 12-step process where I really had the opportunity to see myself, all the resentments and all the hurts and the pains, and I had books and books of them. You know, you write them all out on A4 pieces of paper. He had never seen so much. And he'd been doing this process for years and years. And each time I was writing these resentments out, we then go through this process. And by the end of it, you get to see the part that you've played. I was just like gobsmacked, you know, that how I didn't realize that what a huge part I was playing in everything that was happening in my life. And all that time I'd been a victim. So from that moment, it was that kind of transition from victim to victor, if you like. And I started to make amends and start to repair relationships that had been on complete self-destruct. You know, I didn't really have any good friendships. I was unable to hold down any relationships because I was just so volatile the whole time. So that process was key. And then it was like, well, now I know this ego. I know exactly how it's showing up and how it responds and reacts and hides and defends. But now I'm left with, well, what do I do? Because I don't know any other behavior. I know nothing. And I was walking up to the bins one day. I was married at the time, and another relationship that was just about to go down the drain. I was hanging on for dear life. And as I was walking up to the bins, I heard very clearly a spiritual awakening I had, you know, I can explain that another time when there's more time, but I heard Kabbalah. And I was like, Kabbalah? I was like, isn't that something Madonna was into? I'd never heard it. Yeah. And I took the bins up and I ran up the drive and I ran home and I was on the computer and I was going, Kabbalah, Kabbalah, because it was so strong. And it was like, the energy was just pulling me in. So I ended up finding this, the Kabbalah Center in London. I ended up putting, you know, kind of like requesting a teacher. I didn't really think anything more of it. And then on one Sunday afternoon, I was putting a load of washing in, and this guy, Yehuda, he said, hey, it's Yehuda from the Kabbalah Center. I was like, God, that was weeks ago. I forgot about that. And from that moment onwards, I went on a journey. So I've been studying the Kabbalah ever since. And I've been on a journey. It's been the ultimate of overcoming victim and becoming victor. It's ultimate technology of coming out of the dark and into the light. It's one of the kindest, most compassionate. And people go, isn't that a cult? No. People think anything that's, you know, it's kind of, it's not, you know, it's just very much a technology. Live life in this way and you will get the result. And because I started seeing so many results with this, I mean, I started bringing this into my practice, you know, from my spiritual mentoring and my law of attraction coaching. It's heavily overcoming ourselves, because the only thing that stops us experiencing the life we desire or dream of is ourselves. Nothing's ever out there. You know, our world is merely a reflection of what's going on inside of us. So, of course, we have to go in and do the inner tweaks to change what we're seeing on the outer. So that's what I would say was the moment that I was then able to overcome it. One of the strategies I used was learning to do the opposite of my ego, because everything my ego did created chaos and hurt and pain and separation and confusion. So I was like, well, wouldn't it just be simple? So I spoke to my mentor and I said, wouldn't it be simple just to do the game of opposites? And he said, yeah. He said, give it a try. And you know, he was obviously, you know, advocating it. So it was just little things like I would come down the stairs in the morning, and my husband at the time, he was making a cup of coffee, and I could tell that he was, you know, really struggling with something. And the old Carolyn would go, well, what's wrong with you? And then he said, well, I've got a lot on. I would then say, well, haven't we all? You know, so I was just kind of like, not the easiest to have a conversation with, you know, bless that part of me. But anyway, but now learning to do the opposite, he's stirring his tea. I'm like, oh my God, I've got to do the opposite here. And I said, are you all right? And he said, no, I'm struggling. It's like my ego wants to say, why aren't we all? And I was like, I've got to do the opposite. It's like, oh, I'm really sorry to hear that. You know, is there anything I can do to help? And you could tell he's like, okay, somebody.
Where's Carolyn?
Yeah. But still, I haven't quite won him round, because he's now mistrusting of this energy that is now in the kitchen. So then he said, well, why don't you go and clear the gutters? And my ego, like Hulk, wanted to pop out of its skin and say, I won't even say it on the recording, but it ended with you. But I didn't. I thought, no, this isn't about him. This is about me overcoming myself, because the only way I'm going to experience freedom for me is if I change my patterns. Because if you always do what you've always done, you're going to always get what you've always got. So in this moment, I have the ability now. There's a fork in the road. Am I choosing my old way or new? So I turned around to him and said, yeah, sure. Where's the bucket? And would you like to explain to me how to do it? And again, he paused, and I can just remember this years ago, clear as day. And he went, it's in the, you'll have to get the ladder out and it's in the garage. I said, yeah, sure, no problem. I said, I'll just get my daughter to hold the ladder. But you know what? There was something really powerful that I learned in that. I went out there and it was howling, the winds, and it was raining and it was freezing. And I was up the ladder and I was getting out all the gunk from, some of the gutters, and I put it in the bucket. And I sat there and thought, he's done this every year. Mm-hmm. Every year he's done this, and I never knew that it was freezing cold and it was howling, the wind was howling, and I went into him and I said, thank you. And again, I'm sure he thought it was mental, because this is completely different to Carolyn. Yeah. And I said, I never realized what that experience was like, and I just wanted to say thank you, because now I know what that's like for you, and going forward I would love to help you. And there's loads of things like that I learned, but that's just one tip, is learning to do the opposite, to create that freedom.
It's absolutely, and on a similar vein, it's that point, and it doesn't come without a bit of work, and you've clearly done a chunk of work, and anybody who has done work on themselves knows how intense it can be, which is why so many people kind of run from it and still squash down the emotions. But it's an amazing point in your life when you're, as you say, instead of automatically following the same course of action or voicing the same things or the thoughts or whatever it is, whatever pattern, the first time that you go, okay, actually I've got a choice here. Or you notice when you say something, I was very negative, and I didn't realize how negative I was. I thought, well, negative people are miserable, and I'm not miserable. I'm kind of upbeat and happy, but it wasn't until I started to recognize, and obviously being a writer, words, that's one of the ways I connect. And I was like, oh my God, I am so negative. Even, instead of just getting up in the morning and going, oh, it's a terrible sleep, I'm really tired. And my husband would say to me, no, you just need more energy. And I was like, brilliant, I need more energy. So it's interesting that, we get to that point when we recognize the choice and then start to make the choice. And it's amazing how much opening up happens in such it's kind of like an insignificant moment, but it's actually one of the big moments. Like, the universe loves a contradiction. It's never a thunderbolt or angels or anything mega. It's just so subtle, but it's just so massive. So I just want to kind of jump back slightly. When did you start to work with the law of attraction, either on a personal basis or, obviously you've done some training to take you to the level that you're at. So when did that come into your life? And also, you'd mentioned that you'd been practicing a sort of spiritual path for a while, but we're still in this, sort of self-destructive behavior. So for anyone watching, I think people think that if you're spiritual, then you've got to give up the alcohol and the booze. You've got to, you tree hug and, you're talking about as an angel the whole time. It's kind of not. It's a journey that lasts for quite a long time. So how did that all kind of unfold for you?
So I unconsciously using the law of attraction since I was born, as we know, because it's always a thing. It's just I woke up to the thing in 2006, and I was sat in my living room, single mum at this point, because my first marriage failed, and I was sat there and I was in so much debt. I'd been bankrupt twice. I really was fed up. I was tired. I was fed up. I was lonely. And I just picked up a magazine. I was just flicking through it, and I saw a double-page spread of The Secret. And it was almost like this magazine had this like extraordinary energy, and it just pulled me in, and I was reading going, oh my God. And so many things were going through my mind at that time, thinking, God, I didn't know all this time that I had all this ability, and, but also annoyed. It's like, why didn't somebody tell me this sooner? Why have I had to experience? So all these kind of Emotions went through my mind. But from that moment onwards, I started using the principles of the law of attraction. And from that moment onwards, I started seeing great results. And at this point, I'd already been teaching meditation and mindfulness, and I'd already been into spirituality for a few years. So I decided in the group that I was doing meditations with that I would just start bringing some of these principles in, and they started getting these amazing results. And so I started teaching it after reading the book The Secret. I started teaching it maybe about 6 weeks later. I just started feeding it into what I was already doing. And so that's how that journey started. And as a result of it, I've been running courses and workshops for years and years. And I started like kind of putting and compiling things together. And that's how I got my law of attraction teacher training, fully accredited years later, obviously, because it took a while for me to build it all up. So now I kind of accredit teachers to teach it, but I still love teaching it. So that part of it is kind of like how it started, and that is ongoing.
So just to very briefly interrupt you, for those who are watching and listening who don't know what the law of attraction is, there's sort of 12 universal laws that govern us, and they're not like traditional human laws where it's kind of rules and strict, they're energetic principles of how you can live your life and the best version of your life, and the law of attraction is one of them. So just very quickly, what is the law of attraction? And you mentioned obviously we've been doing it all our lives. We have, but many people might not already know that. So what is it?
Yeah, so now we become conscious of it. So I love the fact that you mentioned these other spiritual laws, because the law of attraction is not as powerful unless these other laws are used alongside it. So when I teach the law of attraction, we focus predominantly on that, but I like to also teach about these other laws, because the law of attraction is powered up by these other laws. So simply put, the law of attraction, it's one of the most powerful laws in the whole of the universe, and it has been increasingly recognized. More and more people, I'm watching like programs on Netflix, and I don't know if you've watched the Netflix program You, but they're like all mentioning about the law of attraction. I'm thinking, God, more and more people are hearing about this now. But it works on the basic principle that like energy attracts like energy, and also what you think about will come about. Some of the phrases described ask, believe, receive. Your thoughts become things. What man can perceive, man can achieve. So in essence, the law of attraction states that we have the ability to attract into our lives what we are putting our focus on. So where attention goes, energy flows. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah. So this is why we've been doing it all our lives, and this is why you may find yourself, and people. A lot of people always go to the relationship. I don't have a boyfriend. Why do not have a boyfriend? I'm still waiting on my boyfriend. It's like, well, that's because your focus is on the fact that you don't have a boyfriend.
Yeah.
This could be a job. It could be more abundance, better health, whatever it is.
Any subject, focus on what you do want rather than what you don't want.
Exactly. So how do you do that? Because I remember when I first became aware of the universal laws, and in particular, I, like you, came across The Secret not long after I read The Celestine Prophecy. And I was, it's very difficult if you're in a really challenging position, whether you're struggling with work, struggling with health challenges, or your relationships aren't great, or kids aren't doing great, or any of the million ways our challenges can express themselves. It's very difficult to go, okay, well, I'm focusing on this and I'm pulling this to me. So how can you take yourself out of that, or how can you, and I know how I teach people to do it, but I'd love to hear how you do, how you help people to take responsibility for all of the shitty stuff that's going on in their lives.
Yeah, I mean, that in itself is really interesting, and that's more of a journey, that's more of a soul discussion, I think, and then the law of attraction is just a part of that. So that's then going into the whole reincarnation, soul contracts. We chose our parents, we chose our experience. When we take it to that level, we understand that ultimately we have responsibility because we chose to experience what we are experiencing, because our soul wants to unlock the gifts that are available through those experiences for its ultimate evolution. But it also wants to help at the same time. So let's just say, for example, as I've journeyed through loads of challenges, I've unlocked loads of healing codes, which means that I now can share those with other people. It's kind of like waving, going, look, I've done it, try this, and it's kind of helping people. So I believe we're here on a dual mission to, become more enlightened, for want of a better word, for ourselves, but then share those gifts with other people. So that would be kind of like a starting point for helping people to understand and to take that responsibility, but also then bringing it more into law of attraction and demonstrating where attention goes, energy flows, how to focus on what you do want rather than what you don't want. Is so many people are just automatically programmed to focus on the negative, and you know, you'll relate to this because of your life, and that can come through the programming of our parents, programming of school, you know, society. We're kind of like, we're just running all these programs, and some of them aren't even ours, so we don't even know that we don't know that we're not thinking positively. We just know we're not experiencing what we don't want to experience, but we don't know what part we're playing in that creation of that. So getting down to real basics with people, I'll say, right, write me a list of everything that you don't want, everything. And they go, but this is the law of attraction. Just trust me. Just write down everything you don't want. And I'll get this list. It's like, right. So if you don't want to be poor anymore, what do you want? Well, I want to be rich. Well, there you go. Write that down. I want to be rich. So at least now we're starting to get to what do you want? I don't want to feel ill and not being able to pick my kids up from school. What do you want? I want to feel well. I want to be able to pick my kids up from school with ease and grace. Great. And then I'll work through the list and start teaching people how on a basic level you can just start swapping out your don't wants for do wants. It can be a bit of a tricky process for people, that one, because people automatically go into negative thought patterns. So this is, as a trainer, I'm really focused on, very keenly watch that pattern. So I'll give you an example of what I mean. I don't want to be poor anymore. Okay, well, what do you want? Well, I just don't want to wake up every day worrying about money. No, what do you want? You know, I don't want to argue with my husband anymore about money. What do you want? You know, and people don't know that their language is constantly creating what they don't want to experience. So, and that's one of the key points, is to say, well, what do you want? I want to be able to have freedom with my husband, to enjoy wonderful holidays, so that we can be really relaxed in our relationship, you know, knowing that we are financially secure. It's that way of learning how to frame things. You know, if you say to somebody, I don't want to be ill anymore, what do you want? Well, I just don't want to like, you know, look at my ankles and they're so swollen and I can't walk. Well, what do you want? You know, I don't want to open a medicine cabinet and all these medicines come flying out because I've got to take them every day. What do you want? So again, you know, that process that shows how ingrained some of these thought patterns are. So in the beginning, it takes a bit of time. So just to complete that one, I don't want to be ill anymore. Well, what do you want? You know, I want to look at my ankles and think, wow, look at those. Those are sexy little beasts. I want to be able to open my medicine cabinet and see how clear it is, and the most gorgeous high-end supplements are just filling the shelves, or whatever it is you want. So again, it's like learning to bring your attention and your awareness to what you do want rather than what you don't want. And that's just a very basic starting point. But even master manifestation, and however long we've been doing this, we all need reminding of it.
100%. And I was just sitting thinking as you were sharing that, this is the kind of thing, if you run your own business, and, you know, like you, I'm self-employed, and to do some form of business plan, to create a plan of action, you have to understand what it is that you want. And I'm doing this at the moment with my art business. And it's so interesting when you say, what is it you want? Because even myself, having spent years and years on a spiritual path and, you know, teaching it and helping people find their purpose, you know, we are all still learning every single day. We're still, you know, students, we're teachers, but we're still students. And it's amazing how much that we don't connect with what we want. And it's almost ingrained in us not to want.
Yeah.
Wanting creates lack, and there's oftentimes we think we want something, but actually that's not our path. You know, and you mentioned this earlier on, and I didn't want to interrupt your flow, but so many people live someone else's version of their life, and we're so in it that we kind of believe it's our path and why we're here. You know, so you might find that you're slogging, and this law of attraction is not working for me, you know, and it may well be that actually that's not your path. So, you know, this is a brilliant exercise for anyone to just take a step back and say, okay, well, what, you know, write down all the things you don't want, which, to be honest, would be not a problem for me. I'd be like, well, I don't want this, and I don't want that, and I don't want this, and I don't want that, because we're so used to it. And that's really just gone pitching. So thank you so much for that. So if you are watching and listening and you are like, okay, well, I'm all over this. I am Mr. or Mrs. Law of Attraction. How can you sort of up level that for those who are on it and doing it? What's the kind of next level up? What does that look like?
So I would say, loving what you said there, by the way, because, you know, we might want something, or we might think we want it, but the universe has something better planned. Mm-hmm. You know, so I always say with my manifestations, you know what, in my limited space where I am now, from what I can see, this is what I want. Mm-hmm. And this is what I humbly request assistance with creating. However, if you've got something better for me, then I will have that instead. Mm-hmm. But I'll also trust, if this is part of my soul plan, then this will unfold in grace, with ease and with grace. There's no pushing, forcing that's going to come. I would say the bridge between those two is then part and parcel of becoming a master manifester is learning to trust and surrender, because a lot of people try and force and push manifestations to happen because they're coming from the fear-based consciousness. Mm-hmm. Master manifestation is coming from that heart center, but also learning to trust that if something is for our highest good and for the highest good of everybody involved, then it will unfold. I've known people to manifest things because they've so wanted it, but then other things have had to happen as a result of that, which aren't pleasant. Mm-hmm. You know, so I don't know if I answered your question. I went a bit off track then, but I think
you did, and it's interesting as you say. And this happens every single time I have these conversations. I'm going through the menopause, and I have these amazing, profound things I'm going to ask. It just goes, it's gone. Yeah. Goodbye. I embrace it. What I do find really interesting with the whole principle is that, you know, so many people, I feel, you know, are trying to action the law of attraction, or trying to incorporate the law of attraction into their lives, but they're coming at it from the wrong place. They're coming at it from a fear-based mentality, because I don't know about you, but there's so much of the law of attraction out there that's about money, job of your dreams, earn that six-figure salary, etc., etc. And that's, you know, that's all good and well, and that's great. But if you're coming at that from a fear base, and it's interesting, it's just come back into my head, which I was going to talk about, is the fact that, you know, and this is the real, and I don't know how you feel about this, but this is the kind of real nub of it, that the more you can attract and bring into your life, the more you let go of what that is. So it's kind of like, the better you are at letting go, and the better that you are of releasing, the better you are going, whatever, the more comes to you, which is the complete contradiction and total opposite. So how do you put it out there and sort of say, well, okay, this is, you know, if this is for my highest good, then this is what I would love, please, thank you, whatever your words are, and then just go, okay, well, that's it out there. Because a lot of people think, well, I've got to keep the energy.
I have to keep visualizing. I have to keep saying my affirmations. Yeah.
And where's the fine line between going, okay, well, I put it out there, and then I'm just going to sit back in my lazy ass and wait for it to come. You know, the balance between that.
It's interesting, because as you were talking, there's this one particular song by Alexia Chaloon, and this song, I think it's Alexia Chaloon, and it goes, and this always reminds me, and I play it when I need to be reminded not to push and force. And it goes something like, I'm allowing everything to just be as it comes to me. I'm shining brightly. And as you were saying that, it's just allowing just everything to come to me. And a lot of the, from a law of attraction perspective, the way I see it is everything we already want already exists in the quantum field. I don't see it so much like we're magnets anymore. I did in the early stages, but I see it's more about tuning into a frequency, because everything we want already exists. It's just we're not tuned into that bandwidth in order to see it. But then also adding to that is, you know, what takes it from simple manifestation, which I think is the big house, the nice car. People are going, what do you mean that's simple? It is on the grand scheme of things, because actually master manifestation is learning to use these gifts that we have well, not for self-gain, not for selfish purposes. It's not here to advocate greed and selfishness. Instead, it's meant, we have this magic, because, you know, I'm a great believer that we are our magic wand. And when we learn to manifest from the heart center, which is a very different space of manifesting from the head center, everything is all about, you know, how by me having this, is this going to make a difference in this world? How can I bring this incredible and extraordinary magic to me and through me to light up not just my world, but as many people around me as I can? And when we put the focus on that, you know, that kind of, that further sight, if you like, that's when everything else just seems to come on its own. We don't even have to do anything. So my thing is like, how can I make a bigger difference in the world as I can? How can I, help as many people? Then everything comes. So for those of you who are into, kind of the similar stuff to us, and want to make a difference in this world, that's a massive shift from basic manifesting to master manifestation. So I always say to people, if you're not in this, but you want to, like, somebody said to me, well, it's all right to manifest the holiday in the Maldives. I'm like, darling,
something for me.
Yeah, as long as you take me with you. And it's like, yeah. And she said, well, how? She said, because I feel like I'm being selfish. And I said, but my love, you're being selfish if you don't. And she said, well, why? I said, because when you go to the Maldives, you're probably going because you're tired and you're stressed, and you're probably then going to be in the ego aspect of self when you're just in survival mode and you're just feeling defensive and reactive, and you're wrung out like a sponge and probably filled with anxiety and depression. She went, yeah, that's you describing me. I said, by you going and having a couple of weeks and just relaxing in the sun and, doing your meditation and doing your mindfulness and having a chat with the universe and experiencing the beauty of this earth, you're resetting your soul. You're able to realign, listen to the oracle of your heart. You're more likely to be able to follow divine guidance, divine intuition. And when you then come back into your world, you're kind, you're calm, you're proactive. So actually, if you don't go to the Maldives, you're selfish. It's selfless to go. And it's a bit like you can't pour from an empty cup. Take care of yourself first. It's a similar kind of principle. So it's like, how by me having this, is this going to make a difference in this world? If we can reframe everything, that I'm not just receiving for myself, I'm receiving for the sake of sharing, that's when the law of attraction goes from minimal to absolute magic. And that's been the difference, that's made the difference in my practice.
Oh, I love it. I love it. And it reminds me so much of something very similar that one of my other guests, Nicola Humber, had said. She talks about, because service is a bit of a dirty word. People, we are all here to be of service to one another, but I know a lot of people don't resonate with that for whatever reason. And she had a lovely way of explaining it, very similar to you, but it was, what is my medicine to share with the world?
Yeah, lovely. Yeah.
What is my medicine? So there's lots of different ways of explaining it. I could talk to you for hours, and we had this conversation before when we first, connected, to discuss doing the interview. And I was like, I could talk to you for ages. So we'll probably have to get you back on at some stage. Thank you so much. You have just shared so many wee nuggets that have helped me, remind me, and I know will have helped everybody listening and watching. Now, you had spoken about you're doing something in May that people can join in. So do you want to just share a bit about that?
Yeah, so in June. So it's June the 14th.
Not May.
Well, it was meant to be May, so I think you're tuning into what it was meant to be.
Okay.
Yeah, so don't worry. It's June the 14th, and it's a free manifesting challenge, and it's 5 days in my group, Become a Master Manifester. So you just request access if you're not in there already. Or you can go through my newsletter, either one. And it's a 5-day challenge where every single day we're going to have our blinkers on, and we're going to focus on, putting our magic pants on and becoming these master manifestors, so that we can really activate and ignite the areas of our life that we're ready to up level on. So that's that. It will then lead into a 5-week course if people want to take that, but predominantly the challenge is designed for that immediate up level.
Wonderful. And what an amazing opportunity if you are watching or listening to share in some of Carolyn's magic. So thank you so much for taking the time out. I know you are so busy. So I really appreciate you taking time out your day to share your story and to be so honest and candid and share a lot of wisdom that I know will help people in their day-to-day lives. So thank you. I'm going to pop all the details of how you can connect with Carolyn into the comments below. As ever, make sure that you subscribe. Please feel free to share this video with anyone who you think would benefit from it, and obviously get in touch and make sure that you head over to Carolyn's website and join that amazing course on the 14th of June. So take care. Lots of love.
Bye.